TTW is made possible in part by viewers like you and by the following.
When I came out as a lesbian, I lost custody of my children.
We know very few of their stories.
I had to do sex work to stay alive.
This is the story of how we got here, about the people who fought for us. What do you say? So we can be proud of who we are.
I believe in our power.
Pride, FX and FX on Hulu.
In 1945, Walter Smith Sr. opened a family business in his name. 4 generations in, and the Smith family remains committed to the ideals he set forth. Offer furniture for all Chicagoans, including a variety of styles and price points, and provide service to all who enter our doors, including in-store and in-home design assistance. We look forward to welcoming you into the Smith family, just as we have since 1945.
Number one value is integrity. Always do the right thing.
We care about people. We want them to be safe, and we want them to know that when they come into the clinic that they're going to be safe doing that.
On Extra Life, a short history of living longer.
We reveal how data became one of the most powerful tools in the fight for extra life.
The collection of data changed how we saw an old virus and a new pandemic.
Tuesday at 8 on WTTW.
Hi Chicago, I'm Andrew.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Jimmy. You're watching WTTW.
Public affairs and news programming on WTTW is made possible in part by the Copeland family, in loving memory of Gene Copeland.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. On the show tonight.
I know that you know what your community needs best.
On the anniversary of her 2 years in office, Mayor Lightfoot announces a multi-million-dollar community investment plan. Plus, aldermen are here to share their half-term report.
The neighbors that I used to know, like they're not there anymore.
We visit Logan Square for more on gentrification concerns, COVID's impact on businesses in the community, and much more.
She was the ultimate agitator and feared because of it.
The life and legacy of Ida B. Wells. A new documentary details the groundbreaking journalist and civil rights icon Pursuit of Justice.
You're walking down Wacker and you can have a trip through the universe. It's really an amazing experience.
Art on the Mart is in full swing, and we've got a preview of the summer lineup. And a calaboose on the loose in Lakeview. What the heck is that? We have details in tonight's Ask Geoffrey.
And Paris, as you mentioned, I'm in Logan Square tonight as part of our latest Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. We'll have the latest on a protest happening right now near Mayor Lightfoot's home on that 2-year anniversary of her becoming mayor. Also speaking with some community leaders who want greater protections against displacement, somebody from an affordable housing development that is being built here, and also a brand new business owner on what that post-COVID retail world might look like. But first, tossing it back to you.
Thank you, Amanda. And now to some of today's top stories. The mayor doubles down on her move to give exclusive interviews to journalists of color to mark her 2-year anniversary. The move has caused controversy and mixed reaction, with some groups praising the decision to elevate the issue of more diversity in journalism, but others are questioning Lightfoot's tactics and timing and criticizing her for picking reporters based on skin color. Lightfoot says she wanted to send a message to local companies to hire more diverse journalists.
So one day out of 365, I say that I'm going to mark the anniversary of my 2 years in office by giving exclusive one-on-ones to journalists of color, and the world loses its mind. How about we focus on doing what is necessary to step up, make different and better hiring decisions to diversify the ranks of the Chicago Press Corps. And we'll have more on the mayor and reaction to her first 2 years in office in just a few minutes.
Illinois public health officials report more than 1,500 new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, with 42 additional deaths. That makes for a statewide total of 1.37 million cases and 22,536 deaths. The 7-day positivity rate right now is down to 2.7%. It's official, the University of Illinois at Chicago has a new name for its law school. What was the UIC John Marshall School of Law will now just be called the UIC School of Law. The university's Board of Trustees approved the name change today, and it'll take effect in July. The John Marshall School of Law was independent until 2019 when it merged with the university. And as you just heard, it was 2 years ago today that Chicago got a new mayor. Lori Lightfoot was sworn into office, becoming the first black woman to hold the job. For our latest Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series, we visit Lightfoot's home neighborhood, Logan Square, on the city's northwest side. Our Amanda Vinicky and producer Quinn Myers spent the day in that area, and Amanda joins us now from the square on Kedzie Avenue. Amanda, are there protests bubbling up there right now?
Protesters are nearby here, Paris. Yes, you know, Logan Square is a hip neighborhood. It's got shops and businesses along Milwaukee Avenue and also along the nearby boulevards, as well as some stately homes and green space. And yes, because it is where Mayor Lori Lightfoot lives, it has also become a frequent spot for protests. Now, dozens of community and social justice groups right now should be nearing the mayor's home as they call on her to enact a wide range of policies like community oversight of police. Now, we will have more on that coming up later. But earlier today, also just blocks from the mayor's home, we came across a smaller action in Unity Park. Now, this was organized by the Logan Square Neighborhood Association and a couple of other groups calling for an elected school board. The neighborhood association says it is about ensuring that there are community voices heard in education policy. It's one of the many issues that they've taken on in Logan Square. Another is mutual aid during the pandemic. The association's leader says it has provided hundreds of thousands of dollars to residents in need.
When the government failed to really provide some safety nets around especially undocumented immigrants, our mothers in our schools, our parent mentors, and our young people, we started raising funds, right, and started getting families emergency cash assistance, rental assistance, sometimes burial assistance. So we're getting close to about $750,000 just through our small community-based organization has been funneled through us back into our community and through our schools.
Monica Espinoza coordinates the Neighborhood Association's parent mentorship program. She says she still has hopes and believes in Mayor Lightfoot, considering her a strong black woman. They met once, she says, and she told the mayor where she lives that they're near neighbors, and the mayor called her homie. She says she hopes that Lightfoot remembers that. Espinoza wants to be sure that there's not only an elected school board, but one that allows for undocumented immigrants like herself to run for board seats. Espinoza has lived in Logan Square since she moved from Mexico about 23 years ago. The area, she says, has changed in that time. 3-story homes have gone up where there used to be vacant lots. Neighbors she used to know moved out. They couldn't afford to live here.
You know, it's super hard. Like, the neighborhood is changing. It's becoming very different than what it used to be. But you still can hear gunshots in the corner of my house. And we have those wonderful, beautiful houses. People still getting murdered. And that's or day by day. That has become so, like, I don't want to say so normalized, but it's something that happens like almost all the time that you kind of get used to that.
Libby Julia Vasquez also grew up in Logan Square, though she says she couldn't afford to live here again after she had moved away for a job. She now works for Bickerdike Development Corporation, which manages more than a dozen affordable housing complexes in Humboldt Park, Westtown, and here in Logan Square. Its latest project, transforming a parking lot in Logan Square into a 100-unit apartment building. Every one of those units will be affordable. Bickerdike expects to soon open applications to potential residents. They have to be within 60% of the area median income. That's about $55,000 for a family of 4. She says the Emmett Street apartments won't just be affordable, when they open next January, she says they'll be nice, with a mailroom, bike racks, on-site manager, and janitor. And they're right in the heart of Logan Square, within spitting distance of the Blue Line station.
The people, the 100 families that will live in Logan Square or in Emmett Street apartments will have access to everything that's around here. So they'll have opportunities for employment because they have direct access to trains and buses. They'll have opportunities to grocery shop, to shop. There'll also be some on-site retailers.
Now, one business that had long been a staple in Logan Square, City Lit Books, closed during the pandemic, but it is poised to reopen as early as mid-June. Former librarian Stephanie Kitchen says the pandemic made her realize you only live once. YOLO, and it has long been her dream to own a bookshop. Even if it is a dicey time to open a small business, as more people continue to work from home, she says she hopes they realize they need to support their local stores if they want somewhere to walk to visit, to discover.
Just have like a place for the community. I mean, that's really what it's about, building community and you know, having people just get together, a place hopefully to hang out, you know, once we get events going again, or book clubs, story time for kids, you know, just a place where people can gather and enjoy some free events, and then also, yeah, hopefully make some new discoveries.
Both City Lit and Emmett Street apartments are close to the can't miss it obelisk that's become an emblem of Logan Square. That monument celebrating Illinois' 1918 centennial, though, is among the 500 sculptures and plaques that are under review for public discussion as part of the Chicago Monuments Project, identified for issues like promoting narratives of white supremacy or demeaning characterizations of American Indians. Now, this is also where tonight's protest kicked off, and we'll have more on that coming up. But first, Paris, back to you.
Amanda, thank you very much. Good job, as always, out there in Logan Square. And Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she surged from near unknown status to become the first African-American woman and openly gay mayor of Chicago. She vowed a new era of transparency and curbing the privilege that aldermen... I'm sorry, we're gonna get into more of Aldermanic reaction to the mayor's first 2 years, but we'll be back with more in just a second. What the hell was that?
Delivered to your desktop or mobile device. Go to WTTW.com/Chicago Tonight podcast and subscribe.
Thanks, Amanda. A multi-million-dollar community investment project, plus reflections on a year of a global pandemic and a racial reckoning. WTTW News reporter Heather Schroen joins us now with more on how Mayor Lori Lightfoot celebrated her 2-year anniversary in office. Heather, the mayor announced the Chicago Works Community Challenge today as part of this press conference marking her 2-year anniversary. What is that and how will it work?
Well, it's going to take $1.5 million in each of the city's 7 planning areas to spruce up city facilities like libraries or community centers, or to fill in vacant lots that are owned by the city. This money is going to come from the city's 5-year, $3.7 billion infrastructure plan that launched last month. So this is just a small part of that overall effort. But the mayor was in Auburn Gresham today to really renew her campaign promise to breathe new life into areas of the city like Auburn Gresham, which have suffered for decades from disinvestment and systemic racism.
And part of that is that she listed what she sees as her accomplishments from the last year. Let's take a listen.
These last 2 years have been very different than what I would have anticipated. But in many ways, I wouldn't trade a second of it. It's been hard. It's been tough. There are times when I felt despair.
Heather, what's your takeaway after listening to that? You were there today.
I was. She has a lot of accomplishments, but she was very clear that many of her plans were outright derailed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic catastrophe, and of course, the civil unrest that swept the city just about a year ago after the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody. So there are a lot of things undone, and the mayor tried to paint a picture today of better days ahead and more accomplishments to come.
We're just about to hear from some aldermen and their take on all of this. Heather Sharon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paris.
All right. Sorry about that mix-up before. Lori Lightfoot surged from near unknown status to become the first African-American woman and openly gay mayor of Chicago. She vowed a new era of transparency and curbing the privileges that aldermen had long been used to in the wake of the bombshell scandal involving longtime Alderman Ed Burke. As we just heard, she took the oath of office 2 years ago today and could not have anticipated what lay ahead. A historic teachers' strike, skyrocketing homicide rates, and a once-in-a-generation global pandemic. And joining us now to share their thoughts on the mayor's tenure so far are Alderman Ray Lopez of the 15th Ward on the southwest side, Alderman Brian Hopkins, who represents the north side's 2nd Ward, Alderman Anthony Beal, who represents the 9th Ward on the far south side, and Alderman George Cardenas of the 12th Ward, also on the southwest side. Good to see all of you folks. Alderman Beal, you heard the introduction there. Has Mayor Lightfoot led this city in a positive direction here at her midway point?
Absolutely not. When you look at the failed policies that have been put in place, when you look at the looting that has taken place, when you look at the crime and the murder rate that has run rampant, carjackings all over the city, and we're not talking about any of those things. And so I'm very, very discouraged that we're talking about, pennies putting in wards when we have people dying in the street and nobody's saying anything about that. They're taking all our police out of our districts and sending them downtown to stand around and do nothing. And so, I'm very discouraged on, we're trying to deflect what's really going on in this city, and instead of addressing the real issues that's plaguing us every single day.
And on that issue of crime, murders are up 22% this year to this point. They were up last year in the 700s from under 500 the year before. Shootings up 33%. Alderman Brian Hopkins, does the mayor wear the hat for this?
Every mayor would. That's one of the top questions that I get asked. It's a concern to the residents in my ward. And I learned early on in my tenure as an alderman, the last thing you want to do is to dismiss people's fear. When they're afraid for their own safety and they hear the statistics, the last thing you want to do is to try and downplay it and say, oh, crime is down if we compare it to 2 years ago, because that will sound like an excuse. That will sound like you have no idea what to do in response to it, and you're trying to deny that it's a problem. She made that mistake today at her press conference, and I know that did not go over well with the people in my communities. When you talk about the police department, Alderman Ray Lopez, you've seen the resignation of Eddie Johnson because of a personal scandal, the interim term of Charlie Beck, and now David Brown. You've also seen a lot of retirements in the top ranks of the police department. What about her handling of the department?
Well, I think, Paris, it's not just the issue of that department, it's the entire city government. Our government, the brain trust of City Hall is running around on empty right now because we have so many individuals who do not want to be a part of city government anymore. They are tired of the abrasiveness, they are tired of the abuse, they are tired of the dysfunctionality that is Lori Lightfoot. Let's get something straight. Before pandemic, she came in with so much hope and promise that people believed in something different coming to city government, and she has failed at every turn, most of the time from self-inflicted wounds. And all we get are buzzwords, all we get are those key phrases thrown at us to the point where they are meaningless now. And as we look and see everything that's going on, the only thing that's been equitable in the city is the fact that we're all now living in fear of being shot or carjacked in the city of Chicago.
And one of the things she came in doing at that inauguration was turning around and looking at all of you and kind of pointing her finger, saying Aldermanic privilege is gone and the life that aldermen had known is going to change. What about on the issue of police reform? Alderman George Cardenas, there seems to be a majority of support in City Council now for a civilian police review board. Mayor Lightfoot doesn't support this plan. She's said for months she's going to have her own plan, but we don't know the specifics of it. How has she done on police reform?
Well, more needs to be done. I think you've heard my colleagues talk about accountability and that the mayor wears the jacket for violence in the city and for economic development and everything you could throw in there. The fact of the matter is that it's been a tough year. This pandemic really took us down in a big way. And so she is accountable to constituents on police and on police accountability. And I think she's saying that she wants a bill or an ordinance that reflects that. So we're all on that together. More needs to be done. She came in, it's an anti-corruption, non-status quo, and that's what you're getting. A lot of folks are not happy about it. but that's what she came in and said she was going to do. I don't like the Aldermanic privilege stamp on it. I think there's a lot more that we weigh in, and it's important for constituents to have their aldermen weigh in on a lot of important topics. So I disagree on that. But I agree on her on one thing. The status quo can no longer be held in the city. We need it to change in many directions. And you're seeing an earthquake in so many different ways. A lot of it, it's related to the pandemic. A lot of it is related to the aftermath of that. But there's a lot of good things in the city. I just was watching the Plan Commission. I mean, projects in the hundreds of millions of dollars, investment in the South and West Side, which was never attended to by previous mayors. The government, I know there's critics, but the garbage is being picked up. Police are doing really nowadays their best job in some of the districts that we're not getting resources. And I look at it, again, half full versus half empty, depending where you're at. If you put your hands to it, if you want to be part of it, if you want to work to make the city better, things are going to happen, and that's what I'm about.
So you're mentioning that some of her accomplishments here, making a lot of news about investing in neighborhoods like Auburn, Gresham. Alderman Beal, you represent Roseland. There was investment in your ward under the previous mayor. Do you think that this mayor has amped up those investments?
Absolutely not. When you look at a lot of projects that I've been able to bring to the table, some of them have tried to been derailed. I've tried to work with this commissioner of planning, and he is not receptive to our ideas. He wants to circumvent us. He wants to work around us, because we don't know what's best for our community. And, that all comes from the top. I have invested over $1 billion in public-private investment in my community. I think we're doing a great job creating jobs and opportunity here in the 9th Ward. But when you look at some of the things that I'm trying to do, when I brought Amazon to the city, they went to the mayor and they said, well, Alderman Bill said he has Amazon. And she said, well, I don't know anything about Amazon. And, that's not a done deal. Alderman Bill is getting ahead of himself instead of embracing me bringing Amazon to my ward.
So it seems like you two aren't seeing eye to eye on who deserves credit for bringing some development to your ward. Alderman Hopkins, she has faced criticism, not unlike the criticism we're hearing tonight, being vindictive or bullying in her personal style. What has your working relationship been like with her?
I don't have a very productive working relationship with her. I don't have much of a relationship at all. I've had, just a handful of conversations with her in the past 2 years that she's been mayor. I will say that one of those conversations was decidedly uncivil. The others were very civil, and I would argue somewhat productive. At least something positive came of it. But overall, she just lacks the ability to form those types of relationships in politics. Remember, she was not a politician. It's one of the things that she presented to the voters of Chicago as an asset when she ran as a candidate. She said, look, I'm not a politician, so I'm different, so vote for me. Well, there's a flip side to that coin. You lack the political experience that you need to build relationships, you need to build coalitions, you need to advance your legislative agenda. You need to have a relationship with the companion piece of government. She's the executive branch. We're the legislative branch. We have to work together. She came in with the assumption that she didn't need any of that. It was not a skill she had, and it wasn't a skill she was interested in developing.
At the same time,
and here we are
Alderman
2 years later, and she still hasn't developed it.
At the same time, two budgets, they have passed with majorities, not giant majorities, but all you need is a majority. So is that evidence that perhaps that maybe more stick approach is working?
No, I don't think so, because the only leadership quality the mayor has brought is division. And the fact that she prides herself on only having to lead to reach 26 as opposed to building to 50, which is the entire city of Chicago, shows that she's not about trying to be a coalition builder. She's not trying to unify Chicago. She just wants to get through it and get through it as quickly as possible. And I hope that she figures out how to right this ship with her leadership style, because as much as I disagree with her, her failing is Chicago's failure. And I think that's something we can all agree on, that none of us want to see this city fail. And one way or another, we will make this right. And I think that requires the city council to start stepping up and filling the leadership vacuum that she is allowed to exist for the last 2 years and hopefully stops in the next 2.
George Cardenas, I'm sorry, you wanted to jump in. Do you see that happening where City Council might override some of her initiatives now that there's a majority in opposition to some of what she wants to do?
I think you're starting to see the building of coalitions that are around issues and that are coming together to show support and unity for the good of the city of Chicago. Unlike what people would call the council wars of the past, this isn't about race. This is about our city. This is about our future and having something to turn over to our children.
Alderman Cardenas, what about city finances? Always a big issue. You know, the last budget, obviously impacted by COVID, balanced with some borrowing. Hopefully she wants that federal relief money. You all want that federal relief money to pay back some of that borrowing. Has she improved the city's financial position at all? Have you all improved the financial position of the city?
Well, I mean, it's been a tough year, no doubt about it. But I think that we do have some help from the federal government coming in. And I think that's going to alleviate a lot of pressure that we would have on increasing taxes and fees and all that stuff that would have to balance the budget. So that's a debate to be having, you know, in the city council. And I'd love to get there as soon as possible. September, we set a deadline for at least releasing parts of the budget so we can get, you know, started on see how this money is going to be used. I expect a healthy debate from my colleagues. You hear that they're definitely not happy with some aspects of our administration. I've talked to the mayor. I think that, you know, in the council, much needs to be done to collaborate. I'm a collaborator. I got along with Daley very, very well. I got along with Emmanuel as well, and I get along with Lightfoot. That's my approach. Finding a way to work together with the person in the fifth floor. It benefits my community. It benefits the city of Chicago, and that's what I'm about. So I'm going to talk to my colleagues about how do we collaborate and how do we get across and how do we speak the same language.
And it seems like you have a different relationship with the mayor than some of your colleagues here on this panel. Alderman Beal, what about her handling of COVID? You do see the rates down. You do see vaccinations up. You do see an effort, at least to try and have vaccine equity. How has she handled this once-in-a-generation crisis?
Well, I made a recommendation to the administration not to use Chicago State because I thought it was a very bad location. And, you know, they had already made a decision to use Chicago State.
This is for vaccinations? For the mass vaccination site.
And right now, they're only averaging 53 people a day out of that site, and they're supposed to be doing over 2,000. And I told them it was a bad site. They didn't listen to me. They went in anyway. And now you look at what's going on. And that just goes back to what we talk about is, you know, this administration does not listen to us. They do not. They say that they do, but they don't listen to us. And that's why you see the city in the situation that it's in. Alderman Lopez and I warned the mayor about the looting. And we told her it was coming. She told us, I don't have time to chase rumors. You can chase rumors if you want to.
After the George Floyd protests last summer, you're talking about.
So we tried. We all try to help this administration, and we all fail in one way or another. And again, you're governing for 26. When you get to 25, you're going to have problems. So we're coming together as a city council, and we're going to do what's right by this city because we have to right the wrongs. You can't tell people that, you know, we're going to move the city forward, but then you tell them, don't ask me for, you know what, for the next 3 years if you don't vote for my budget. What kind of leadership is that? I don't have to like you to help your people provide a better quality of life. That's what it's all about.
A lot of challenges that you all face, and 2 more years in this current term. We have the economy opening up again after COVID. We'll see how City Council and the Mayor works together to tackle some of these challenges, and we hope to see you back here again soon. But for now, our thanks to Alderman Ray Lopez, Brian Hopkins, Anthony Beal, and George Cardenas. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paris.
Up next, a summer preview of a very public art display, so please stick around.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/dailybriefing and sign up.
There's much more ahead on the program, including an inside look into a new documentary about trailblazing journalist Ida B. Wells. But first, one of the city's free public art experiences is back with a trip through the universe. Arts correspondent Angel Ito shares how Art on the Mart is working with cultural institutions to bring their work to Wacker Drive.
You're walking down Wacker and you can have a trip through the universe. It's really an amazing experience.
It's a light show unlike any other. It features work from the Adler Planetarium and work from the Art Institute of Chicago, featuring work from artist Bisa Butler.
This really highlights what we are so excited about, which is that we can be a platform to amplify the work that other cultural organizations in our great city have been creating, even in the midst of a pandemic.
Art on the Mart's unique location, projected across the massive face of the building formerly known as the Merchandise Mart, makes for optimal views. And it's the skyline that makes the Adler Planetarium's current trip through the universe that much more exciting.
The visuals actually go through 4 different sequences. It starts with Earth, our home planet. That's what's going on behind me right now. Then it moves into planets and shows different worlds, takes people to different worlds like Saturn and Mars. Then we go to the stars. We show people how stars evolve and change through time. And then finally we go to beyond. We go into more speculative realms. We show people the scale of the observable universe and how the universe came to be the way it is now.
Now, this galactic excursion is paired with tunes provided by Sun Ra, a jazz composer known for his cosmic sound, which can only be heard from speakers along the Riverwalk.
Sun Ra was from outer space. I don't know if you knew that. He arrived on the planet, and his plan was to one day bring all of his people back into outer space with the power of music, building a spaceship out of his music. And so really, his music is really eclectic.
This trip through space is just one of many projections showcased on the Merchandise Mart. The 30-minute shows also feature work from Chicago public school students and the Obama portraits. And while Art on the Mart continues to partner with existing institutions, they also recognize the importance of showcasing local artists. That's why they're always taking proposals.
Over the long duration of this project, we're going to be able to show an even greater and more diverse range of projections. And so we invite, everyone's participation.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
Student projects officially joined the lineup this evening, and we hope that you enjoyed that sneak peek of the Obama portraits. They officially join the lineup starting June 17th, and you can catch Art on the Mart every night at 9 and 9:30. Still to come on Chicago Tonight, we're live from Logan Square with the neighborhood's aldermen, plus the latest developments on a protest near Mayor Lightfoot's house. A new documentary detailing the life and legacy of civil rights icon Ida B. Wells. That airs tomorrow night on WTTW, but we give you a preview. And a calaboose, yes, a calaboose on the loose in Lakeview. Find out all about that in tonight's Ask Geoffrey. But first, some more of today's top stories. The mayor responds to a vote of no confidence from some rank-and-file police officers. Members of the FOP Police Union issued the vote of no confidence yesterday in the mayor, as well as Superintendent David Brown and First Deputy Superintendent Eric Carter. FOP Lodge 7 President John Catanzara says the membership spoke loud and clear with this vote, but Mayor Lightfoot shrugged it off.
Getting a vote of no confidence from that guy is a badge of honor. Accepted. So as I said, there's always going to be critics. That goes with the territory.
And Chicago officials say they will allow full-capacity block parties to return to the city's streets and neighborhoods starting July 5th as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to wane. But the city will not allow the parties to feature bounce houses. The street parties were banned throughout the summer of 2020 as officials struggled to stop the spread of COVID-19. Chicago Department of Transportation will start accepting applications to close up to 2 blocks of streets starting June 6th. And now we check back in with Amanda Vinicky, who spent the day in Logan Square as part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Amanda, what do you got?
Ferris, we are joined now by 35th Ward Alderman Carlos Ramirez. Rosa, thanks so much for being here. Now, you have been a frequent critic of Mayor Larry Lightfoot, and course, there was a sizable protest right here in the square just a bit ago and near her home. What should her priority be now in the second half of her term?
Well, I think there's a lot of ground to be made in rebuilding trust with the public. There's been a lot of broken promises. Look, I've been a critic of the mayor, but I've also partnered with her a number of times on a number of things. I know they were just out here giving her a report card. I don't think she got Fs on everything. I would give her some Cs and C pluses, especially on things like housing. But I think there's a lot of broken promises on elected school board, on civilian oversight of the police. We've got to get those things done now that we're going to return to normal and we have more capacity to look at other things other than responding to the pandemic.
And you do back civilian oversight of the police. Is that something that you foresee happening while Mayor Lori Lightfoot is in office?
Well, the mayor promised to get it done in her first 100 days. And thus far, we do not have an ordinance from her. The ordinance that has the support of the Black Caucus, Hispanic Caucus, Progressive Caucus right now, it includes the provisions that Mayor Lightfoot campaigned on. It includes provisions that experts on police reform have said we need to have if we're going to get it right. So quite frankly, I don't understand why the mayor is opposing this ordinance at this point in time. We need her to join with the community groups who have come together to support the Empowering Communities for Public Safety Ordinance and to support the caucuses and the majority of the city council that want this ordinance to pass.
You mentioned that one of the areas in which she's done relatively well is affordable housing, and we spoke with someone earlier who's part of this affordable housing complex, 100 units that is going to be going up just near here. How important is that for this area?
Well, look, we have seen so much displacement in neighborhoods like Logan Square. Chicago has such an ugly history of segregation. We need to create integrated neighborhoods. And the diversity that exists right now in Logan Square, we want to build upon that. We want to preserve that. And it should be a model for the rest of the city. So if we're going to preserve that diversity and that integration in this neighborhood, we need to do more things like the 100-unit affordable housing building that we're building just down the block.
More changes coming, including right here to the, I was going to call it a square, but really it's more of a circle. Changes coming. Can you describe what's going on?
Yeah, so we're in beautiful Logan Square. Right now, Milwaukee cuts right through the square proper. We are going to close that off and create a true roundabout. So you're going to have beautiful green park space. And then we're also going to reroute Kedzie Avenue. This was a years-long project that was initiated by the community. We're going to create a plaza where Kedzie is at right now. And we're going to reroute Kedzie through the bus turnaround at the Logan Square train stop. So Kedzie is going to go right in front of our 100-unit affordable housing building. It's a really great project. We've been working on it for years. We have the funding in place. We're hoping, based upon the latest news we have from CDOT, that construction will start this fall.
Now, as you and I talk, it seems like there are some restaurants and bars nearby that are bustling. Of course, we are still, however, in a pandemic, and also spoke with a new business owner who says it's kind of scary to be opening up right now. What can the city council do to boost retail, to boost activity in neighborhoods like this one?
Well, you know, there's no question that the pandemic really hurt our small businesses. I think we need to use the American Rescue Plan and the money that's coming in from the federal government to help support our small businesses. I think we also have to convene stakeholders, small business owners, worker advocacy groups to talk about what are the types of provisions we can put in place to make sure that as we get back to work, that people are safe and that our economy is working for everyone. I think that we have seen that a lot of low-wage jobs are not good jobs that are providing people with the living wages that they need, particularly in the restaurant industry. And that's why we've begun to see some places like McDonald's begin to offer $18 an hour. I think we need to see more support for workers to really make sure that they have the things that they need to thrive in the workforce.
Thank you very much. Once again, that was 35th Ward Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa. We'll be back with more coming up. Back to you guys.
Ponce for details on a new documentary about a trailblazing journalist. Phil.
Paris Ida Wells took great risks to expose the horrors of racism and fight injustice through her investigative journalism and civil rights advocacy. Her life and groundbreaking work on the subject of the new WTTW Chicago Stories documentary airing tomorrow night. The film covers Wells' early life and work in the South, as well as her ongoing legacy today. In her early 30s, she moved to Chicago after racist mobs destroyed her Memphis printing press.
She had lost everything at age 30. Not only her physical property and her printing press, but also her friends, which is no small thing.
Having lost my paper, had a price put on my life, and been made an exile from home for hinting at the truth, I felt that I owed it to myself and to my race to tell the whole truth now that I was where I could do so freely.
And joining us is the writer and producer of the documentary, Stacey Robinson. Stacey, welcome to Chicago Tonight, and congratulations on a really outstanding documentary about a woman the New York Times called, in a recent article, the most famous black woman in the United States of her time. Why don't more people know that? I certainly didn't.
Hi, Phil. Thank you for having me. That's a very good question. I think most of us have heard the name Ida B. Wells. We're starting to learn more about her now. But I think some of it has to do with perhaps how outspoken she was in her own day, that she was kind of written out of history, and possibly because of how we, the lack of interest or emphasis that we have on women in history, and especially African American women in history.
Well, as a writer, she is probably best known for the investigative journalism she did, investigating and reporting on lynchings in the South. And there was a pivotal moment in her life, which you describe in the documentary. Tell us what that moment was.
Well, really, what happened was there was a lynching in Memphis, and it occurred in an area known as the Curve, and there were 3 gentlemen that were lynched. They were murdered, and one of them was actually a very, very good close friend of Ida B. Wells. Really, she felt that he was like family, and I think that activated her in a way to do something about it. I think that she had, in some ways, bought into this false narrative that was pervasive at the time of the reasons behind lynching, which was usually that there was a criminal act, or that black men had raped white women. That was very typical. But in this case, she knew that was not true, and it activated her. And I think it changed her in a way, and she decided to use all her journalism efforts to fight back against the lie of lynching.
And she went on to do that with investigative pieces. She investigated lynchings throughout the South and reported on them, brought them to public consciousness, not just in this country, but also overseas. How dangerous was that work for her to look into those incidents, to look into those acts of violence?
I have to imagine that it was, I can only imagine how dangerous it was. It certainly was not common for African American women in the 1880s and 1890s to be traveling alone in the South, much less looking into the truth behind these atrocities. She's been referred to as a muckraker, and I believe she really was. But she put her life at risk. There's no doubt about that. Men, women, and children were being lynched in the South, and she was at risk of that kind of retribution. But she was unflappable. She was determined. But I say that I don't think that she probably thought herself to be some sort of a hero or a martyr in any way. I think she just she believed it needed to be done, and she was going to do it. I think it was more of determination than any desire to be placed on a pedestal.
Connect the dots, would you please, between her life and the work of African American activists today? How direct is the link?
That's a good question. I think during the making of this film, of this documentary, we saw a very, very significant through line, more than we expected. We knew it was there, but really, I think Ida B. Wells really, she lays the blueprint for the things that we are fighting today. There's a lot to be looked at. For one, the way that she, excuse me, there's noise next door. But for one, the way that she was willing to use research and kind of a data investigation to fight against this false narrative that was going on. That's very much similar to things that we see in the Black Lives Matter and even in Say Their Names as well, where we bring to light the facts behind some of these atrocities. And that's what she did. I think that's very pertinent in the Black Lives Matter as well. And also that it's a movement that ordinary people can become activated and do something and then make effective change that changes our world for the better. I think that she would put herself in that same camp. It's just an ordinary person who was willing to fight.
Stacey, what is it you'd like viewers to take away from your documentary?
Well, I think I'd like them to have to for one, have an increased appreciation for Ida B. Wells because she was phenomenal. She's terrific. I'm a big fan now. But I think I'd like them to take away maybe perhaps a different perspective, a more wider perspective of American history from a voice that we haven't heard before. I think that representation matters. We need to hear more stories from a wide range of people. Ida B. Wells is a fresh perspective on the history of our country, and it helps us understand where we are today.
Stacey Robinson, thank you so much, and again, congratulations on a really outstanding piece of work.
Thank you.
And Ida B. Wells, the Chicago Story Special, airs tomorrow night at 8 right here on WTTW. And now, Paris, we go back to you.
All right, Phil, we'll look forward to that documentary. And now we go back to Amanda Vinicky, who has spent the day reporting in Logan Square as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Amanda, how's it going out there?
Well, Paris, just a little bit ago, we spoke with Reverend Marcus Guerrera and also Tanya Watkins. They are with Southsiders Organized for Unity and Liberation, or SOUL, one of the groups that organized this evening's protest. And I started out by asking them what they think of how Mayor Lori Lightfoot has done these past 2 years.
How has she done? On this 2-year anniversary, she's made campaign promises already that she was going to care for Latinx communities of color, and she hasn't done so. Instead, what she does is she takes the money that she says she's going to actually put into those communities, puts them into things under the guise of community centers, such as the new Discover Call Center down in my neck of the woods there. And really, it's just a ploy to build the city's revenue, close that $1.2 billion deficit in the budget. And so, really, she's proven just time and time again that she's not caring for the communities that she says she's going to care for.
Anything to add there?
I completely agree. I completely agree with the pastor. You know, we need a mayor who is focused on equity. She committed to, reforming the police. That has not happened. In fact, they are worse in Chicago. Yeah. She committed to investing in schools and now fighting against an elected school board. Yeah. So, we need a mayor that's going to show up for the most marginalized folks in communities. And Lori Lightfoot just has not done that in Chicago. No.
Why come to Logan Square to spread that message?
This is her neighborhood.
This is her neighborhood.
Yeah. We want to, we feel the trauma in our neighborhoods, particularly on the South Side. We need to come speak to you where you live.
All right.
Have you gotten any sign, because this is not the first protest or action in Logan Square, that she has heard that message?
I would say no. No. I mean, just flat out no, period. Because if she had heard that, then she would have come to the table when CTU was striking against CPS. She would have come to the table when we're calling to defund the police. But instead she said she's going to reform the police, and instead, like Tanya said, they're worse than when they started, when she came in. She started the new ticketing program where if you go 6 miles per hour over the speed limit, you get a ticket. Nobody's saying that we don't want people to be safer in the communities, right? But the data has already shown time and time again that speed tickets don't actually, or the cameras don't actually slow anybody down. All they do is create revenue for the city, and that's what she's doing in the midst of a pandemic when people are hurting the most.
Tanya, a lot of hopes were pinned on Mayor Lightfoot by some progressives early on, particularly what she ran on. She is a black woman who is gay, something that she says she has made a lot of inroads in many of the areas in which you talk about. Has she done anything that you applaud?
You know, what's unfortunate, even if, you know, about this conversation, Black and brown youth tried to tell us then what type of person we were getting. This is somebody who was leading the police board when they were doing some of the most egregious acts to Chicagoans, particularly Black and brown folks around the city. So, like, there were folks who absolutely knew what type of person Lori Lightfoot was, and, you know, unfortunately, people just didn't get it. And so now, like, we have to expose what's happening in City Hall, expose what's happening in communities, and get folks to understand that, like, we need a mayor that works with us and not against us.
And again, that was Tanya Watkins and Reverend Marcus Guerrera, both with Southsiders Organized for Unity and Liberation, or SOUL, organizers of this evening's protests here in Logan Square. Ferris, back to you.
All right, Amanda, harsh grades from those protesters. Thanks very much. And we should mention to our viewers, we did invite Mayor Lori Lightfoot on for a one-on-one tonight to mark her 2-year anniversary on the job, and she did decline our request. And up next, Brandis Friedman and Geoffrey Bayer in an encore presentation of Ask Geoffrey. But first, we take a look at the weather.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part through the generous support of the Julius Frankel Foundation.
History buffs are big fans of historical markers, those often overlooked plaques that tell tales of events in that spot from years past. Our own resident history buff, Geoffrey Bayer, is here to tell us about some historical markers around Chicago that don't quite hit the mark in tonight's Ask Geoffrey. Hey there, Geoffrey.
Hi, Brandis.
So this question comes from Larry in Lakeview. It is, a brass plaque on the side of an apartment building at Byron and Clark says something about a calaboose. What is it talking about?
Okay, well, I was so excited to get this question because it's about one of my favorite Chicago oddities. This is a 1937 Chicago Charter Jubilee marker. These were historical plaques that were installed all over the city to celebrate Chicago's 100th birthday, and most of them are long gone now.
Okay, so before we go a whole lot further, when you say calaboose, what are you talking about?
Yes, well, actually, I had to look this up myself. It turns out calaboose is an old term for a jail. So this plaque marks the site of the jail for the town of Lakeview, which of course is now a neighborhood. It was annexed to Chicago in 1889. But as with many of these Jubilee markers, you mentioned this, the history is a little questionable. Even though each marker bears the inscription authenticated by the Chicago Historical Society. Now, I want to say right off the bat here, we have nothing but the highest respect for our friends at what is now the Chicago History Museum. We've collaborated with them for years. But Town of Lakeview records put the original calaboose in the town hall nearly a mile away from this marker at Addison and Halsted. Of course, it is possible that there might have been an earlier jail here. Another plaque that you can still see in Chicago with dubious history is on the northwest side in the Sauganash neighborhood, and it marks the, quote, Old Treaty Elm, which stood until 1933. It claims that this was the site of the Indian Treaty of 1835. That's what it says on the plaque. Trouble is, there was no Indian Treaty of 1835. The Treaty of Chicago took place in 1833, and it wasn't signed here. It was signed at Fort Dearborn near the mouth of the Chicago River.
Any idea why it was placed there?
Well, yes. The plaque does correctly state that this property belonged to a mixed race Native American named Billy Caldwell, or Sauganash. The U.S. government had given him this land in exchange for help in negotiating treaties with non-native settlers, so maybe that's where the confusion came in. Now, Billy Caldwell had to live way out here because of something called the Indian Boundary Line, and that's marked by yet another plaque. That one is at Rogers and Clark Streets. This line was established in 1816 to keep Native Americans far from Chicago. As you can see, the plaque was later obscured by a traffic control box. That's evidence that people had really lost interest in these markers after a while.
Yeah, you can barely see that one. How many of these plaques were put up?
The Chicago Charter Jubilee Committee installed more than 70 of them as part of a months-long celebration of the centenary of Chicago's 1837 incorporation as a city. And only about a dozen or so are left. Many were stolen or just scrapped when the building was torn down. Despite their wobbly accuracy, they do give us an idea of what Chicago was like in the early days. And maybe even more interestingly, they reflect attitudes in 1937 when they were installed. So a good example of this is the marker for the Kinsey Mansion, which only recently disappeared with the construction of the Apple Store at Michigan Avenue in the River. It read, "Here was born in 1805 the city's first white child, Ellen Marion Kinsey." It all but ignored the fact that this home's first owner was a person of color. And in fact, Chicago's first permanent resident, Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable. And by the way, they also got the date wrong. Ellen was born in 1804. Another lost plaque nearby that identified an earlier home of Billy Caldwell describes him as a, quote, half-breed.
Okay, so, you know, maybe it's just as well that those others are gone. Were others more accurate or less offensive?
Yes, many of them simply marked firsts. For example, the first drawbridge across the Chicago River at Dearborn Street. I love this one. This wooden contraption got stuck so often that fed-up citizens hacked it to pieces with axes.
And in addition to the downtown plaques, many were out in the neighborhoods as well.
Yes, that's true. And you can actually still see one. I love this. It marks the first home with a telephone in the Lakeview neighborhood. The home belonged to John N. Hill. Problem was the only two other phones he could call were in the town hall and in a local bar. Others marked plank roads on the west side and the south side of Chicago. These were wooden roads that warped and rotted on the soggy prairie. They were so bumpy, settlers nicknamed them corduroy roads, and they sometimes stole the planks to use them for firewood or building materials. Still other plaques marked an 18th century French mission in Albany Park, a Civil War POW camp on the south side around 35th Street, and even an underground railroad stop in Beverly.
And Geoffrey, you mentioned that the plaques were only part of the 1937 celebration.
Yes, there were parades and pageants and even a presidential visit, way more than we have time to talk about here, but we have lots more about the Charter Jubilee celebrations on our website.
Okay, lots of fun facts. Very interesting. Thank you, Geoffrey.
Sure.
And head to our website to find out more about the Charter Jubilee celebration and other Ask Geoffrey questions. And while you're there, get your Calaboose in gear and send in your own questions about Chicago to Ask Geoffrey. Back to wrap things up right after this.
And that is our show for this Thursday night. Please join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Week in Review, where we'll dig more into the mayor's midterm report card. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and enjoy that warm weather out there tonight.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm serving Chicago for 37 years.